Folks, welcome to a special installment of OU Insider Live. Brandon Drum is out tonight being a dad, but I am Parker Thune here every Wednesday night. I would imagine most, if not all of you, know who I am right now, and I also imagine you know who my counterpart tonight is, for he was a member of the 2000 National Championship team at the University of Oklahoma. We recently added him, his colleague Barry Wise, and their fantastic podcast to our content lineup at ouinsider.com. Damian Mackey is on board for the show tonight. D-Mac, thanks so much for doing this, man. Stoked to have you on board.
Man, absolutely. Anytime I get the opportunity to communicate with the Sooner brass and the phenomenal Sooner Nation, man, I'm all in. So it's all good.
Let's get our bills for the night out of the way. Want to remind you all before we go any further that this stream is brought to you by Manscaped. Now, fellas, blink if you haven't purchased a Father's Day gift yet. Yeah, thought so. Today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Our friends at Manscaped have crafted the total package for Dad's special day. Whether it's for the boys downstairs, his beard, or even the best pair of underwear out there, Manscaped has his bases covered. You know that beard trimmer that your dad's been using since you were in grade school? Yeah, it probably needs upgrading. Introducing the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, the complete beard maintenance kit for all of the bearded kings. This all-in-one kit comes with a beard hedger, Manscaped's most advanced beard trimmer, as well as a shampoo, conditioner, oil, and balm for his beard. It also comes with a brush, comb, and scissors so he can style his beard and mustache like the true gentleman he is. And no beard kit would be complete without Manscaped's handyman face shaver. For that smooth finish we know he loves, this bad boy is all he needs. Compact enough to fit in any travel case. Make sure he takes this on his next trip. And if he carries a lot of body hair, like most dads do, you're in luck with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. This bad boy is designed with fathers in mind, featuring the signature Lawnmower 5.0. You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code OU Insider at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code OU Insider. Never forget where you came from, if you know what I mean. Happy Father's Day from Manscaped. And you guys that are watching right now live, go ahead, fill up the chat with questions if you got them, whether they are on recruiting, baseball, softball. You just want to hear D-Mac share some anecdotes from the old days. By all means, make your requests known in the chat, and we'll try to hit as many of them as possible over the course of the next hour. But D-Mac, I want to rewind. We were talking a little bit before we went to air, and obviously the Sooner softball team is very much in position to take home a fourth straight national championship. Patty Gasso has a dynasty on her hands, and that's nothing new. You're seeing it in full force once again this year. They have the state-of-the-art new facility at Love's Field. But as you were mentioning, when Patty won her first national championship, which just so happened to be in the year 2000, the year that you guys won it on the football side, the facilities were less than impressive at that point in time.
Nah, they were terrible. They were atrocious. In fact, we used to be like, God dang, does anybody have a decent stadium besides football? And what's crazy is obviously our stadium has gotten 3 makeovers since. But I got to tell you, man, we had a blast. We were obnoxious. One of my buddies, Tim Duncan, dated a softball girl. Curtis Fagan dated a softball girl, and so they would always try to get us to come to games. We're like, man, we ain't going to no softball games. And of course, we were fair weather fans. When they got good, all of a sudden we were like, hell yeah. So we were going to the OSU game. We went to KU. It was good times, man. We were definitely hecklers. And got a couple of under a couple of umps skin a few times and on the verge of getting kicked out of away stadium. So good times, I must say myself.
Now, the top storyline as far as OU recruiting this week is obviously the Anthony Agumaro recruitment, which came to an end yesterday evening. That one didn't go in Oklahoma's favor. Tennessee made the late charge, was able to outduel the Sooners for the 3-star lineman out of Elgin by way of North Carolina, by way originally of the West Pacific island of Saipans. That was a cool story. Sooners went down to the wire with Tennessee in that one, but Volunteers ultimately win that battle. And DMAC, it's interesting. The 2025 class as it stands, 15 total commits, 2 of them on the offensive line, one in Ryan Foje, the outstanding offensive tackle from the Houston area, and then Owen Hollenbeck, the fast-rising 3-star guard from the DFW area, former teammate of Nigel Smith at Melissa High. 2 really good players but 2 of what is likely to be 4, if not 5, in the 2025 class for Oklahoma. I was impressed, honestly. I I was pleasantly surprised by how little the board melted down when it became apparent in the dwindling hours of that recruitment that Agumaro was going to pick Tennessee over Oklahoma. But from where you stand, D-Mac, how do you feel about the way that that one ended and where Oklahoma turns from here? I think, as I said, most understand that it's not the end of the world, not
Yep.
cause for alarm, but certainly a guy you would rather have had than not that ends up going somewhere else.
Token shout out to Hype. In fact, I'll kind of spin it and say, hey, bro, you overspent. We want to protect the borders and make sure we take care of our own. And when you have quality D1 talent in the state, you want to do your due diligence and ensure that you're taking all proper measures. But the facts are the facts. And I think you articulated that well on the board. The coaches still have a job to do, and there's a standard at OU. And if you are a guy who is a cut above, then yeah, we need to go and do what we need to do. Whether that be NIL, mom, whatever the relationship we got to create is, or the opportunity, the investment we got to create is in today's landscape, we got to do it. But if you're, and I don't want to call him a jag because he's not, and I think
Yeah.
there's a little, I think it's important to speak to the fact that he is an Oklahoman, but he's not a true Oklahoman. He wasn't Sooner born, like you stated. I am okay with Tennessee doing what many are rumored to have said, opened up, the checkbook or dropped the bag, whatever you want to call it, and us not spending there. I think there's other places where we can get a better ROI on our investment. And here's the deal: we're in a portal world. We're in, the second recruiting season. There are going to be gems, and I've said this for years, Parker. One thing that you got to give us credit for is we have found players in the 11th hour for probably the better part of a decade. OU for the last decade wasn't the OU from the early 2000s where they could have the pick of the litter, but OU still has a brand, being a blue blood, that if this kid can't get where he wants to go, it's the first place kids are looking at. And I think our coaches understand that as we rise. We are 100% ascending to top echelon recruiting destination. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of other opportunities. I think that he's a guy who's a borderline starter. I don't think he's a guy who has the ceiling of potentially an all, uh, um, conference or a national award winner type guy. So you know, um, hold back all the emotions. Let's see this thing through. But we do got to say, hey, Oklahoma kid, tip of the hat to Tennessee for coming in here and getting a victory.
Absolutely. And, I imagine it's probably not a perspective that everybody shares, but if a kid's not going to go to Oklahoma, you might as well have him go play for a former Sooner
There you
in
go.
Josh Heupel, right? By the way, I see all of you in the comments who are saying my audio's low. My apologies. So Spencer, our typical producer, for those unaware, he lives down in Texas like DMAC does. They got hit with some strong storms tonight, and he was unable to facilitate the stream. So we're running this out of our backup production studio. Some things are not going to be the same just from a production standpoint. So I'll try to project. I have everything maxed out. So if I'm still quiet, let me know. Rest assured, I see you in the comments. We'll try to compensate as best we can. We did get a super chat. Oh, and it was nothing. Stevie Rowland gave us $5 and there was no question. So let's see what else we have in the comments here. Justin Goss wants to know, will OU Insider set up an online dynasty when NCAA Football 25 comes out?
Let's go.
Yes, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. West Coast Sooner says, I want to hear D-Mac. Y'all got to turn it up. We're doing what we can.
They can't hear me either.
I don't know, man, but we'll keep it rolling.
Ah.
Now, obviously, many are, I think, concurring with your take on Agumaro. And, if this was a battle that was going to be decided late in the process, and NIL was going to play a role, as obviously it's been reported at OUinsider.com and elsewhere for that matter, that NIL was a factor, certainly not the I'm hesitant to say not the deciding factor, not the only factor, I guess. He had a lot of reasons to choose Tennessee with his younger brother and the situation with his autism and the attention that Tennessee provided him, the support that they provided him whenever he was on campus. So, but I think there's a healthy understanding, DMAC, and I think Dominic Williams, the way that all shook out, kind of helped reframe people's perspective on OU's NIL and not only what they have at their disposal, but the way that they dole it out, and helped emphasize to most everybody that it's about willingness with this staff, not about capacity at this point. There's plenty of money in the bank. It just comes down to how you're going to allocate it, how this staff wants to allocate it, and which players they're willing to go above and beyond to try and land. And you look at the rest of the board from here on out. Darius Afalava, whom I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch him on film, but #1 player in the state of Utah, that immediately becomes Oklahoma's top priority at the guard position. And then 4 very, very talented offensive tackles, all of whom are going to official visit to Oklahoma next month. Ty Haywood, Michael Fasusi, and Lamont Rogers from the state of Texas, and then Andrew Babalola from the state of Kansas. So there does seem to be a healthy understanding that when it comes time to do so, and there is adequate reason to do so, Oklahoma will open up the purse strings for big-time offensive linemen.
It's interesting, Parker, and I hope the guys can hear me. I have a good friend of mine. I'm not going to say what program he is, but he's a head coach at a dominant district here in the metro. And I mean, he's probably got 17 offers out just on his 25 class. And he was breaking down to me all of the coaches and programs that are coming out. In fact, they're just factually saying a lot of programs are spending way over and beyond for kids that aren't panning out, and schools are having buyer's remorse. And so between the NIL agents who are trying to lead these deals, and then universities, I'll throw one out there because I don't give a damn about them, but A&M, guys, A&M is in a world of trouble, a world of hurt. They've got a lot of money, we all understand that, but it's never fun to spend money, right? Just frivolously. You want to have some tact, you want to have some strategy to what you're doing. I heard firsthand multiple players, and by the way, one that should be a Sooner, D tackle, top player in the state a couple of years ago. He should be a Sooner, but some shenanigans went on behind the scenes. That's neither here or there. The point is this: the landscape for NIL is becoming more, I think, pointed, and I think judgmental on both sides. There's a lot more judgment on schools, and people are seeing that OU didn't just open up the bank and just try to buy recruiting classes like an A&M, like a Florida, some of the other schools, and it's worked. We're heading in the right direction, and recruiting is as good as it's ever been. So it'd be interesting to see. I think a lot of people belabored our approach to NIL the last 2 years, and Venables coming in and what we're doing and what the hell's going on with the different compartments, and I think we're kind of galvanizing. The glue is finally coming together. But people are like, Oklahoma is actually addressing this correctly. And so it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. I think the young man choosing Tennessee made a good decision for he and his family. Salute if they made a couple bucks in the process. But like you said, we've got our eyes on much bigger fish today. And here's the deal: you can always do what happened to Lole in the ninth inning. You can always throw a bag. You know what I'm saying? You can throw a bag in the bottom of the ninth and say, "Hey, man, come. We'll throw an extra couple dollars at you." So we've still got our bag of tricks if we need to go that route.
We got a super chat from Bishop Frank Newkirk. Big salute, SDCOU Barbershop fam at D Mackey. So there you go. Heads up to you with a super chat. But
love.
Here's what I think is interesting and probably hasn't been talked about enough is what I appreciate and what I think is admirable about the fact that OU has approached, or I should say the way that OU has approached the NIL game up until this point, DMAC, is that they didn't put themselves in position to be a guinea pig in the NIL era, because there were several schools, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Miami, and others, that as soon as NIL became legal, they just flung themselves into it and decided we're going to buy the best roster that we can possibly buy, and we'll see what our pocketbook can do for us in terms of success on the football field. And they had to find out the hard way that you might be able to buy a roster, but you can't buy wins in college football. You can't buy culture. And for Oklahoma, I think there was, and there are several other schools, several other programs across the country that operated in the same fashion, but there was a reticence to go full throttle right off the bat because of those very justifiable concerns about what kind of effect NIL was going to have on a locker room. And so I like that Venables and his staff said, okay, we'll let everybody else, we'll let the A&Ms and the Miamis of the world be the guinea pigs. And then when we have more data
Yep.
on our hands in 2-3 years, more empirical data to be able to figure out how we need to approach this and what works versus what doesn't, then we're going to ramp up our NIL spending efforts. And again, I think Dominic Williams is the watershed recruitment, if you will, in that regard, because certainly Oklahoma had won some recruitments due in no small part to their willingness to invest in the past, but that was the first big time portal player where it felt like Oklahoma said, okay, really doesn't matter what the asking price is, whatever it is, up to a certain point. Still got to be reasonable, but
Right.
if it's within our ballpark, we're going to do whatever it takes to land this guy. And I would venture to guess that moving forward, there will probably be a player or two like that in the portal every single year that the Sooners treat with that type of reverence, if you will. And I imagine, I know when Venables got here, D-Mac, that didn't really want to play the NIL game, didn't really want to play the portal game because he worked under Dabo Sweeney at Clemson for a decade. And you look at what Dabo's doing now, he's still holding out, man. He's still not using the transfer portal. Clemson was the only school, save for the 3 service academies in the entire FBS, that didn't take a transfer this past offseason. So Dabo is still vehemently anti-portal. Venables made some concessions because he had to. You had to
Had to.
rebuild a roster with the bones of what Lincoln Riley left him. And the Sooners have taken a more aggressive, still a measured approach, still a calculated approach, but a more aggressive approach than I think Venables imagined they would when he first showed up and it's day one on the job at Oklahoma. And maybe you get to a point, right, where you don't have to rely on the transfer portal year in and year out to be able to supplement your existing roster. I think you'd love to get to a point where you don't lose all that many guys to the transfer portal at the end of the season because there's nobody that's getting left behind. Everybody is developing according to plan. Everybody feels content with where they're at Oklahoma, and you can have a high degree of roster retention year over year. But at least at the outset, that just hasn't been feasible. And Oklahoma has been able to strike a really solid balance with doing what needs to be done in the portal and via recruiting to make the additions that they need to make to put themselves in position to contend on the national level, but also not sacrificing the philosophy, if you will, on the altar of microwave success.
Yeah, I think BV is true to culture, true to himself, true to his character, and the how he handles the portal isn't any different than how he handles the day-to-day activities, how he handles preparation, how he handles off season, how he handles summer. It is what it is. It transfers, it's transient. And so when I think about the portal though, Parker, I think when you see a school like Alabama, there are always those areas of your team where maybe you're recruiting well and you've got 3 or 4 or 5 high 4 and 5 star players, but they just aren't the echelon in college as they were in high school. You can go cherry pick the kid that went from what do you go from Georgia to Texas, the Mitchell kid. Like
Yeah, that's right.
that kid came and was he was a game changer for Texas, right? Uh, and Alabama has had a couple. Georgia has had a couple, right? So I always feel like in this day and age, it's probably shrewd to have one or two because you can go get, think about it, that left tackle. You can go get, what I'm saying, a left tackle, and you've got a decent kid, but you can go get an All-American. What is the art? What's the return on investment of having that guy? What's the return on investment of having that DN or that D tackle, that three technique, who you've got two solid guys, but you can go get a Dominic Williams or someone else who is going to make all the impact and really be a disruptor, an ass kicker. But I agree, right? I think we took 14 or 15 portal guys BV's first year, which was extremely necessary, right? We needed to replenish the ranks, especially amongst the offensive defensive fronts. We lacked a quarterback, obviously, with Mr. Paint His Nails himself going to SoCal, which, by the way, I'm not a hater. I'm not a hater. I actually want him to succeed in Chicago. We'll see how
You
he
ever
can play.
painted your nails, D-Mac?
Never. Absolutely not. Are you freaking kidding me? Hell no. No gloss, no nails, no shine, acrylic, or whatever they call that. Negative. But I like where we are. And I think, like you said, we've shown that our strategy, our approach to NIL has worked, or NIL has worked. And you're going to see the A&Ms pull back. You know, my buddy was like, oh, he's a diehard Texas fan. We coached together when I was at Cedar Hill in 18, and he's a UT guy, and we talk a bunch of crap to each other. And he's like, yeah, Texas has this. They've got something called like the O-line Junction Club, where there's these donors. It's just NIL for linemen. And he's like, we've got multiple seven figures and blah blah. Hey, bro, I don't care what y'all got. Y'all coaches try, and they've improved this last year, but they've got to do it twice to prove that it wasn't luck. But they've got some internal things they got to address, and they've always recruited well, right? It's not like NIL is going to help Texas so much. They've always been a top 3 to 5 recruiting juggernaut. Their issue is September through November, and so we'll see if they can keep what they did last year because they lost a ton. They lost a lot. And I like our chances. People, I know people have been speaking about what OU's outlook looks for the 24-25 season. I'm here to tell you, obviously I wear crimson colored glasses. I'm a Sooner, duh, right? And I happen to not lose a game. You know what I'm saying? My last full season, we didn't lose. So why the hell would I ever think we would lose? But I think we've got some X's and O's in place. I think we've got some maturity and returning starters in positions where you really need it. And I think we've got an infusion of transfers and talent that are going to help us minimally get to I'd say 9.5 is a safe over under that I'd bet the over. 10, I might push, but at 9.5, I'm betting the over without question.
Well, I got a couple questions to float your way, DMAC, just based on some of the talking points that have continually cropped up nationally in the new SEC discourse. One being, and you kind of touched on it right there. Yes, Texas loses a lot. They have to replace 11 players that were NFL draft picks in April. Why doesn't there seem to be any concern nationally about Texas being able to fill the void that those 11 leave?
Number one is quarterback, which we believe is, I got to tell you, I am ecstatic that he's coming back. Just FYI, I don't think he's the game changer that, his reputation states. He's kind of like the Dak Prescott. I hope I don't offend people, but to me, he's like the Dak Prescott of college football, where
So you're not a Dak guy, huh?
I'm a 49er, brother. I'm born and raised Niner, so hey,
I got
hopefully I
you.
don't. But number one quarterback, number two, I would have to say schedule. Their schedule is absolutely one that, if you look at it based upon what happened last year, it's much simpler than our schedule. And then number three, I would say they have a history of replenishing their ranks. And so there's always going to be a prejudice for a school who consistently recruits well. They've got the quarterback who led them to the playoffs returning. And then the schedule matters. Their schedule is one of the easier, softer schedules in the SEC. I don't think Texas has a terrible year. If they don't win 9.5 as well, then something's seriously wrong over there. I would say from a culture standpoint.
I think many look back on the 2022 season at Oklahoma, the 6-7 campaign that was just miserable for all of us, right?
Yep.
Like it was no fun. But many look back on it now and regard it as a necessary and foundational step towards building in the direction of being a championship program once again. Yes, it sucked at the time, but you had to take your lumps to get back to where you wanted to get to under Brent Venables. And the Sooners are certainly on that trajectory. Let me ask you this, though. Oklahoma's schedule, in stark contrast to Texas, which is, like you said, pretty much a cakewalk by SEC standards.
Correct.
Oklahoma's schedule is being talked about as potentially the toughest in the entire country. And there's certainly a case to be made that it is the toughest in the entire country, at least on paper, right? We don't know yet what these teams are actually going to look like in the fall. We all have our guesses, we all have our assumptions, but we don't know. Perfect example last year would be a team like Missouri that everybody thought would win 5 or 6 games, and they end up winning 11. Like sometimes you have outliers, teams that are way better than you expect them to be, teams that are way worse than you expect them to be. Alabama might fall flat on their face in year 1 under Kalen DeBoer. I'm not counting on it, but theoretically, it could happen. Same with Tennessee breaking in a first-year quarterback. But let's say, because the Vegas over-under win total for Oklahoma is 7.5 wins.
Yep. Easy money.
Let's say Oklahoma, I don't think this will happen, but let's say it does. They take it on the chin year 1 in the SEC. They only win 7 or 8 games. They, when faced with road trips like that trip to Ole Miss, that trip to LSU, even the neutral site game versus Texas, they get bested. They don't have what it takes to get it done. That would suck in 2024. Would you look back on that 2 more years down the line and say, okay, OU kind of needed that in order to just familiarize themselves with the rigor of playing SEC football?
You see my face right now.
I figured.
Nah. Hell nah. We don't listen, change of the guard necessary. Link did some shady things to us on the way out and tried to leave us in a shitty situation. And I salute Coach Venables for how he addressed it, how he handled it like a man, and really didn't fight fire with fire. He stayed above board. No, right now OU is in the midst of proving to everybody that last year wasn't a fluke, and we are still in an ascension, and really going back to where we deserve to be, which is a top dog, irrespective of conference. I don't give a damn about conference. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and with all due respect to the SEC, and oh, Mackey, he's naive. Maybe I am naive, or maybe I'm cut from a cloth that says when you go to OU, you're playing for and with the best. Period. Guys, Ole Miss ain't the best. When's the last time they won the conference? Missouri got their ass kicked out of our conference. Like how is Missouri gonna talk smack about us when y'all was also ran in our conference? And any year you were good, you couldn't beat us. So what are we talking about, right? I'm looking at Auburn, and I'm like, you guys are the OSU to Bama. Unless you've got a Cam Newton or somebody, right? You get some miracle field goals. But let's talk facts. You ready?
Okay.
Here we
Let's
go.
do it.
South Carolina's replacing their quarterback. They're on our schedule.
That's a fact.
Tennessee is replacing their quarterback. They're on our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. LSU is replacing their quarterback. They're on our schedule, right? So you talk about 3 SEC, big dogs, middle dogs. I don't know what they are. To me, it's Bama, Georgia, and everybody else. LSU once every 4 years. Let's just call it a spade. Like those guys are all breaking in new quarterbacks, and I know what they're going to say. Well, so is Oklahoma, and that's partly true, right? That is partly true. But if we stack up our top 32, 35 versus Ole Miss's top 35 versus Tennessee, and I love hype. I literally love hype. Hype's going to roll out the red carpet when I go to a Tennessee game. He's already like, Mac, when you come in. But let's just call a spade a spade. He's still living off that team from 2 years ago when he had the quarterback and the receiver. Like Tennessee doesn't have a stacked cupboard. Hence, they're overpaying for a kid that if we really wanted, we could have got him. Duh. Like we could have got the kid if we wanted him. They're overpaying because they got to restack the cupboard. So I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like, okay. By the way, Missouri's going to be a tough game. They got a good thing going over there. But I'm looking at Ole Miss. I like us by a touchdown.
What's wild is like, I tell you, man, how many transfers is Ole Miss going to take this offseason?
Well, it feels like that's how they recruit.
It feels like now they're just taking the leftovers. They're taking the kids that nobody else wants. I mean, I saw it pop up on my Twitter feed today. There's a wide receiver from Florida that's literally been in the portal for 6 months, D-Mac, and he's taking visits to Marshall and Nevada, and all of a sudden it's out there on my Twitter feed. Ole Miss is going to host this kid, and they're the leader in the clubhouse, the land of service. I'm like, is he ever going to play a meaningful snap for them? Feels
Listen,
like now you're just taking transfers for the sake of taking transfers. Is
no
it
shot at
just
no shot at Key Lawrence, but he wasn't going to start here any longer. He's in there starting. He's in their top two in the depth chart, and that's not a bad thing. But we know he's stiff at the hips. We know he has cement feet. If somebody's running a high low on him, he can't get over the top. We know this, and we're going to attack that next year. So it'll be interesting. We're not Nostradamus, but I feel confident that if we stay healthy, especially along the offensive line, the offensive line is going to be critical. We can't have injuries there, especially on the outside. We stay healthy there, and if Jackson can grow who we know he can grow into and have that leadership that he showed as a pup. He showed a lot more leadership in some capacities of the game than Gabriel did when he got his opportunities. Those two things happen, and we're going to be cooking with fish grease. It's going to be fun to show everybody else that OU, like, what are we talking about? We're acting like OU is Ole Miss. Two different things. Apples and doorknobs. Apples and doorknobs.
apples and doorknobs? I love it. Man, so I want to bring up something that's getting a lot of run right now in the chat, folks discussing amongst themselves. And I didn't watch the YouTube video. I saw it dropped today, and I saw there was a lot of chatter on social media about it. But apparently, Tawi Walker went into great detail on why he decided to leave Oklahoma for Wisconsin. And basically, the crux of it was uh, he didn't feel like he got a fair shake. He didn't feel like he was the guy when he should have been the guy in the backfield. And I do know this for a fact. When Tawi Walker told the Oklahoma staff that he was going to be getting in the transfer portal, they offered to give him a scholarship because he was a walk on. He was
Yep.
still a walk on at that point. They said, if you want to stick around, we will upgrade you to full scholarship status. And he still elected to leave. To his credit, and Tawi was an awesome guy, awesome to cover. I know he had that little spat with DeMarco Murray that people had their all different opinions on, but for the most part, just a really, really hard worker. And there's a reason why he got to where he did in 2 seasons after coming in as a very unheralded preferred walk on from the Las Vegas area. But uh, your thoughts, D-Mac, on Tommy Walker's assertion that he was underutilized last year at OU?
There were games where I felt he was underutilized, by the way. I just want to put that out there. They were like, why did we take him out? There were games where he was playing well and the rotation was the rotation. I'm not going to speak specifically to which running back. I am like, I don't know if he's OU good. He looks good in his uniform, but I don't see it. I'm gonna leave that. He's still there, and it's not Sawchuk. We'll just say that. Um, I like having um, you know, faith in yourself. I like people who are confident and believe in themselves. I think there is some validity to the point where there were times where we didn't use him or he was playing well. He got rotated out, and for some reason, the rotations, didn't see him get back in critical times in the game where he probably could have been a help. But, he's not a program changing running back. And I don't think it's a huge net loss for us. He's absolutely a guy. I think the way OU handled it was perfectly. When I found out they offered him a Scally and he said no thank you, I respected them because that told him they valued him. I also respected his decision because, I mean, tell me a Tyree Walker at Wisconsin isn't like exactly what we've seen the last 20 years, right? Like
He's a perfect Wisconsin
he's
running
the
back.
proverbial Wisconsin running back, and I think that's a wise decision for him. He leveraged the OU platform to get exposure and found a way to get to where he needs to go. There's no hate in that. I'm not mad at that. But if he were, we're talking about Adrian Peterson leaving, we're talking about, Samaje P. Ryan leaving or something like that. That's a different conversation. Plus, we're recruiting well at the position. And I want to throw this one out there, Parker. I don't know if he's such the same fit in Seth's offense. Seth's offense is going to have some nuanced differences where he's going to want speed on the edge. He's going to want the matchup against a backer, a Willie backer into the flats or at the arrows or up the seams. And that's not his game. So I think there would have still been a place for him in this offense, but I think his skill set, again, it's the perfect match for whiskey versus what we're going to be looking to have our running backs do with Seth.
And we got 3 months to preview every single aspect of Oklahoma's 2024 season. But just to riff off that point a second, what do you expect some of those key differences to be between the new Latrell offense and the Levy offense? You mentioned more speed at the running back position, or at least more versatility, perhaps. Anything else?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Levy's offense is like 1/3 of the depth of what Seth's going to deploy. You got to remember Seth was with Fedora. Seth was with Wilson, who his offense, man, I wanted to play in his offense. I think Wilson had the best rendition of OU's offense. That's another conversation for another day. And then obviously he came up under Leach initially and Mangino and those guys. So where Levy liked to count the box and take, the strong or numbers where we had advantages. And then on third down, we like to see the best matchup, spread them out, and see where we have the best one-on-one matchup. Seth's going to make defenses think more. When Levy's offense would get bogged down, it would be when the other defensive coordinator could dial up what we were going to do. And it was actually pretty easy to do. I was looking at film from October and saying, man, or really late September. The film from late September of last season was just as good as film from the week before. In other words, what we did down in distance, what we did against coverage, it didn't change much. If they played us man, you could bank on slants or fades, right? If they played a zone, you could bank on an over under. It's called it's a shallow concept. Like those are things we did week 1 that we did week 11, and there wasn't a lot of variance. There was not a lot of delta. There was not a lot of difference versus, and then here's another thing. It pissed me off, Parker. We
Oh
went
boy,
to
here
a
we go.
sniffer. We went to a sniffer. I want to say week 8. I forgot who our opponent was, but a sniffer is essentially a second tight end off the line of scrimmage that you can motion across. He can ram block. He can lead through the hole. Whatever. It's jargon, right? That was like some huge thing in the offense. Oh my God! We're starting to run power. It's essentially a kind of like a delineation of power. Like, bro, that should be in your offense anyway. Like, why are we so happy that we're doing midline and adding an additional blocker to overload? That should be one of the fundamentals of your offense. And with Seth, we'll have that. We'll run power, we'll run counter. If we need to get mean and just lean on people, we'll have a bevy of run game action and QB run game action, and then we'll have jet sweeps and end rounds off of that. If we need to get light, we can go 4 wide and we can bubble screen you. All right, we can quick game you and we can action you. And then, of course, if you want to play man, we can junk route you, we can double move you, or we can just put our best athlete on your weakest link. Levy's offense never deployed all of those concepts together. His game plans were very, very superficial. And then he would have like specials. So we'd run our stuff, special. Run our stuff, special. Versus Seth says, you do this, I match you with that. You move your rook here, I'll put my queen here. There's depth to the offense. And so we'll have a lot of styles to lean on, and teams will have to watch a ton more film, which means they won't just be able to react. They'll be thinking pre-snap. I'm excited. And
Yeah,
we talked about that. Seth and I had a conversation like, Mackey, because he knows I'm a football nerd too. So he was like, Mackey, we won't have at it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. Let's talk transfer portal. Let's turn the page here. The Sooners are still in pursuit of an additional defensive lineman to bolster their 2024 roster. They hosted Chris Hardy, the Jacksonville State transfer, yesterday. They had hosted Aiden Huntington, the Louisiana Monroe transfer, last week. Virtually identical players in terms of production and physique. Huntington was 6'1", 280 pounds, had 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks last year. You got Hardy at 6'2", 270. Guess what? 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks last year. So you got two guys from the same genus, if you will, that both visited Oklahoma within days of each other. And now I think, D-Mac, it's just going to come down to want to, because Oklahoma didn't end up wanting to push for Huntington, at least not at the price he wanted. And OUinsider.com members are aware of a lot of the background details at this point on the Huntington recruitment as well as the Hardy recruitment. But Huntington ended up committing to Tulane this morning. And, he's visiting Oklahoma next week. He's committed to a place like Tulane. What that speaks to is the reality that him and his folks wanted a little bit more, but some may say a lot more in the
I get
NIL
you.
department than he was actually worth. With Hardy, again, the Zach Alley connection makes it very, very clear that OU has the unique advantage, the inside track, whatever you want to call it. If they wanted Chris Hardy, I feel pretty confident that they could get Chris Hardy. It's going to come down to want to, because there will be a price point, DMAC, and there's also the reality that neither of those guys are the prototype of what you want playing defensive tackle in the SEC. Good football
Yep.
players, right? But you're talking SEC defensive tackles. That isn't necessarily what they look like. Not to say they don't play like that, maybe, but they don't look like that.
Yeah, I don't know that the rub is worth, the risk, and they don't move the needle because we're going up an echelon in physicality. And I just remember a lot of years, and not to, talk smack about some of my, but like I just remember the last of the Bob Stoops years, and we had a ton of 6'2", 280-pound guys in the Big 12 even, and
Yeah,
they just didn't have the impact. They're not big enough. And so um I know we're looking for quality depth. I know the Lole deal was, an unexpected consequence for winning the D Williams I don't know, sweepstakes, I guess you would say.
sure.
I kind of feel like we wait and see. I feel like there's going to be I feel like we've got enough young guys that we need to see which of these guys are prepared to play. If one of these guys were 6'3", 305, yes, right. We need to get another big dog in there. If they have that production, but they're going to be coming up from, you know, group of five experience to playing in the SEC. To me, that's too many red flags on a Scally for a guy who wants to get paid. I don't know. I don't feel good about it. I'd be okay with this standing pat.
Yeah, well, and Ole Miss is also very involved for Chris Hardy. Shocker there,
I
right?
know, right? That's the
School that it
recruiting
seems
season.
like
That's
they're
the
taking.
recruiting season.
Oh man, and how much money do they have to spend on transfers? Because again, Hardy, like Huntington, maybe the price won't be obscene, but he'll come at a price,
Yeah.
and that I think also is something that maybe has been undersold a little bit from a narrative standpoint in the discourse as Oklahoma moves to the SEC in the NIL heavy transfer portal era of college football. The way it's going to be, DMAC, is when Oklahoma pursues high end, highly coveted transfers. If they go somewhere else, it's not like you just forget about them now like you used to. Odds are, if you don't get them, you're going to be playing against them.
That's the landscape we live in. And to a degree, I remember always saying, right, these kids deserve to get paid. And I just think there needs to be tweaks to how, they are compensated, and when they are compensated. So yeah, it is what it is. We went from, poking our chest out to having Lole to he literally said, "Hey man, I switched sides of the Red River. Mother sucker. Now we gotta go kick your tail." You know what I'm saying? So but at the end of the day, man, if you're a talent and you've earned the right, we're in America. It's a capitalistic, what I'm saying, country. And heck, I'm in a capitalistic profession my dang self, so I get it. You want to get paid your worth, your value, and these guys are. Think about it. You're coming from Jacksonville State. Like he's not. What has he experienced thus far? He's got an opportunity to potentially cash in. Um, at a place like OU, we're not looking for that type of kid. We're looking for a kid who wants to develop, come win, and then cash in the league and make some money in the process. I would say that's more in alignment with our line of thinking. But I also understand the other side of the coin. So all I gotta say is this: you go to Ole Miss, I promise you, they're gonna lose to us. Ole Miss is not gonna beat us this year if we're healthy. If we're healthy, Ole Miss will be a game we win by over 7 points.
Hey, folks, you remember that May 22nd, DMAX said it.
I said it.
Oklahoma wins in Oxford this fall. I think it's a different conversation because Hardy has played a lot of defensive end in his career. I think it's a different conversation if you're bringing him in as a defensive end. It it's very clear at this point that what Oklahoma needs, what Oklahoma wants out of a guy like Hardy is to make him a full-time defensive tackle.
So that's my
And
question. Do you think he sees the field at defensive end at OU?
if he winds up at OU, I don't question that there might come a time or two where he gets a snap here, a snap there. But there are so many defensive ends on this roster that are
Exactly.
capable of holding their own, bring something a little bit different to the table. You'll be able to mix and match them in different packages depending on the situation, depending on the look you're getting offensively from the opposition. There's no need for another defensive end right now. And so if you're bringing Hardy in, again, you're bringing him in with the expectation that he is going to contribute in a rotational capacity at defensive tackle. And it's going to be hard for him to do that at 6'2", 270. And, from what it sounds like, he may not even be 6'2", 270. So,
Oh man.
you gotta be an Aaron Donald at that point, and there's only
Right.
one Aaron Donald.
Right.
There's
So,
only one Aaron
well, there
Donald.
is a
Okay.
Kelly Gregg though.
That
Especially at
there
the college.
is.
Kelly Gregg was my size. Like, bro, you're 5'11", and you shaped like the Muffin Man, and he was a dog.
Oh, Big Reggie Powers in the chat said D-Mac's a great addition. Salute. Hey, salute to you, Reggie. We are obviously very much looking forward to your son seeing the field in the rotation at safety for Oklahoma. I think that's a guy that you'll see a bit this fall. I don't know how much. A lot of it hinges upon what happens in fall camp. And obviously, Oklahoma has three really, really talented safeties. But one thing to like about Powers, man, is he's got that versatility. He can slide down, he can play the cheetah, and he's just a hitter. One of the fastest players on the team, one of the most natural, gravitates to the football. He's not afraid to lower the shoulder. That was a really, really good pickup by Oklahoma late in the
I agree.
class when things
I
fell
agree.
through with Michigan State. Brandon Hall was on it. It might stand as the least ballyhooed commitment of all time at Oklahoma because it happened in the fourth quarter of the Kansas game, which of course they ended up losing. So
There you go.
yeah, after that game gets over, and it was Oklahoma's first loss of the year. So after that game gets over, everybody on social media, in Lawrence and elsewhere, they're all like, "Well, we got Reggie Powers, but that loss sucked, man." And it did suck. It was a terrible, terrible way to lose a football game. Getting Reggie Powers was the silver lining. And who knows, based on his career at Oklahoma, you may look back on that as a day that Oklahoma actually came out on the winning end, despite losing their last ever conference game in Lawrence, Kansas. Uh, on that note, how excited are you for these young defensive backs, man? Not just at safety, but at corner. The way that Brandon Hall and Jay Valai have completely revamped their respective rooms in the span of 2.5 years is pretty freaking remarkable.
I think I broke it down on OU Insider. The the physical presence that we now possess in the secondary is one that is absolutely going to be okay in the SEC. Did you see the publication somebody posted the top 10 safety units and OU wasn't in it? And you've got Billy Bowman who had 3 pick sixes and was second in the nation. He was like third in the nation in the Thorpe. And then you got the pup who was, I mean, like, what are we doing? Just the total disrespect. Anyway, off my soapbox. I'm excited about the secondary. Obviously, at safety, it's probably the strongest position group on the defensive side of the ball. I think you feel really good about what you've got there, and even the second team guys. Spears Jennings, like the kid comes in and plays well, right? Like you've got a lot of quality depth there. I mean, when you get the Harrington kid to leave, you've got to be doing a lot of things right. But corner is what you're speaking to. We have like big, strong, long, physical, fast guys, and I can't remember the last times we've had the number of guys that we have. When you've got Kanai, by the way, someone was talking smack. I'm just here to tell you guys, I promise you, he is in the mix to start. Just to make sure it's crystal clear, he's not entrenched. He's obviously not like the kid from Booker T, who as long as he stays healthy and keeps those shoulders okay, he's entrenched as a starter. But Kanai is in the mix, right? And those pups, man, I don't know, man. I feel good. We've got 2 or 3 6'1" and above guys with long arms who run 4.4, who've been in the system 2 going on 3 years. I expect us to be locked down in a lot of games. And corner, like defensive end, are positions that can absolutely change the momentum of a game. When receivers can't get off bump or get open, and quarterbacks have to hold the ball for that one additional second, that's the sack, that's the strip, that's the turnover, right? And you can't do that with 5'10" DBs. What's the kid's name that went to Miami? What's the I
Jaden
forgot his name.
Davis.
He's a corner. We got Jaden Davis, the kid who made what's the guy who ran 4.21? He was a freshman at Texas. In the first play of the game, he takes it 90 yards. I'm like, oh God, whatever. Screw the Texas kid. But we don't have to worry about that anymore. Our guys can line up pre-snap. The quarterback, like, God dang, he's big, strong, and fast. They're gonna have to rethink how they're gonna be scheming us. And we've got a lot of them. We've got 4 or 5 of them. Who do you think you're starting quarters week 1? Park.
Man, that's a great question. I would still say, and it's the least sexy answer. It's
Woody
the
and
least speculative answer. I would still say Gentry and Woody Washington
yeah,
to me. And, I think we all understand at this point Woody's going to bounce around, but corner is the position that at this point he's played the longest. He's got the most reps of anybody on the roster by a long shot at that position at Oklahoma and Venables defense. And
for
so
sure.
I think he starts there, and yeah, like you said, assuming Gentry is healthy, assuming that Labrum is back to 100%, he's going to be the other corner on the field when the starting 11 trot out against Temple on August 30th. Now, corner, much like defensive end and much like safety, I think you'll see a good deal of rotation there. Like you're not going to get Woody and Gentry playing 70 snaps a game. I think you'll see a lot of Kenai Walker. You'll see a lot of Des Malone. Uh, Eli Bowen is a guy that has made a ton of strides, and I know he is not necessarily as physically blessed as the rest in terms of his length and sheer mass, but just really natural, instinctual football player. He's a Bowen, man. Those dudes are gifted. Those
I
dudes are
know, right?
gifted, and
I heard he's got some honey badger in him. That's the rumor.
that is the comp, man.
Yeah.
Honey Badger, and I'm eager to see it. I don't know how much you see it this year, but I think you probably see a great deal of it by 2025. And then you throw in Jacoby Johnson
Yep.
and Makari Vickers. Man, that's as impressive a group of corners as Oklahoma has had in years.
I can't think of a
Years.
better. Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Before we get on out of here, man, let's talk Diamond Sports briefly because obviously the Sooner softball ladies are going to host Florida State in the Super Regionals this weekend. If you're asking me OU or the field, I'm still taking OU. I'm not gonna bet against Patty Gasso until she loses one. So as long as they are on this run, going to continue to bet on the softball program. Getting ready to host the Seminoles. They've had some classic postseason battles
Yep.
with that program in the
Yep.
last few years. And then baseball, really impressive performance today down in Arlington against TCU. They win 4-0, shutout fashion. Braden Davis threw a 4-hit complete game, 9 strikeouts, no walks. He's morphing into an ace, man. And that is one thing you really, really
Neat.
need if you're going to go deep in the postseason. You're going to run this thing to Omaha because that was kind of the one question mark. And there were a few question marks on Oklahoma's 2022 team. It didn't matter. They got hot at the right time. They stayed hot. Peyton Graham and Tanner Treadaway were studs in that
Man,
lineup,
yeah.
and they took it all the way to the national championship series. But the one question in 2024 for this team is the pitching rotation strong enough and deep enough? The bullpen's good. Bullpen's really good. You got a lot of arms you can lean on. Maybe don't necessarily have an automatic shutdown guy. You don't got your Mariano Rivera out of the pen, but you got a bunch of different guys where, you can entrust them with a 1-run lead and have a great deal of confidence that they're not going to crash the bus, as it were. The question is the rotation, and Braden Davis really over the last month or two in particular, he's been stellar all season, but especially in the last month or two, man, he has really cranked it up a notch. He's playing his best ball, and his MLB draft stock is shooting upward. It's really unfortunate for Skip that
It's the second
kind of feels
time,
like
right?
kind of feels like exactly what happened with Cade Horton is going to happen with Braden Davis, where you were going to have this guy next year, and then oh no, now he goes and dominates, which is great because it benefits you, but then he's gone at season's end.
I'll tell you what, I made the analogy This I'm still taking OU softball versus the field. This team to me is reticent of the Kansas City Chiefs. If you were going to beat the Chiefs, last year was the year to beat them. As a 49er fan, obviously we didn't. And they've retooled, right? And I think Patty kind of learned about some of the transfers and some of the pitchers she was expecting to continue the dominance at the level they have, but they still have the pedigree, they still have the coach, and they still have the culture. And so if you made me bet $1,000, I'd still take OU versus the field. Looking forward to FSU because they've had some. I even believe like Ricketts and those guys had some FSU battles 18 years ago that were pretty damn good. Baseball, I'm just catching on. I'm a bandwagon fan, can't lie.
That's okay.
I got the Twitter update today. I saw that we got the dub versus TCU, and I saw Graham. I was like, okay. And I'm looking at his stats and complete game shutout. I said this off camera, and I'll say it again. If we make it to Omaha, I'll go to a game. Haven't been in probably 18 years to the college baseball World Series, and so if we get there, I'll see you guys in Nebraska with my OU threads on. You know what I'm saying? Cheering for the Boomer Sooners.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's my hometown. So that is, I grew up.
Really
Yeah. So I grew up going to the College World Series, man.
awesome.
And so, everybody, I had this conversation on the radio today. Everybody's like, how cool is the College World Series, really? Because there are so many folks that haven't made the trip. And I'm like, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I kind of take it for granted. It was part of the summer rhythm, regardless of who was playing. I'd go with my buddies. You could go to the grocery store and they'd be selling booklets of 10 general admission tickets, which I think there are only like 14 games in the entire CWS. And so you get one of these little booklets for $80. You can just go to pretty much every single game. We'd chill in the
Uh,
outfield and catch batting practice home run balls. And it was awesome. That was my childhood, my adolescence. But it's really, really cool to get to cover OU in 2022 when they did run all the way back to Omaha and almost came away with the national
man,
championship. And so, yeah, man, I mean, hey, you end up making the trip up. I'll have a lot of food places you can hit. That's my town. So, and the one thing about it is it's very, very easy to get around. That is the one thing that I never really did appreciate about Omaha because it was all I knew. But once I got in the industry and started going around to a lot of different cities, lots of different sporting venues, Omaha, even at the height of the College World Series bustle, very easy city to get around. And so it's a very enjoyable experience. The College World Series in general, just super, super cool. Awesome time for that week and a half that it's going on up in Omaha. And it was really cool that in 2022, I didn't know this, but it turns out there is, and for the life of me, I can't remember what the place is called, but there's a big time OU fan out in West Omaha that has a pizzeria and its name is tied into OU somehow. I can't remember how, but like it was very clear to me when I found out about the place. Oh, that's a nod to Sooner fandom. The name of the pizzeria. I'm have to double back, but there are a lot of surprisingly quite a lot of OU fans up in the Omaha area. I hope if the Sooners go back to the College World Series this year, though, there are more people that make the trip up this time around, and I think there will be. But that was the one thing, man, is they were playing such good ball. They were so hot, and then it gets to the championship series,
and it's
and
all Ole Miss.
Charles Schwab Field is 90% Ole Miss Rebel fans all
Mhm.
throughout the park. I mean, they're everywhere, and props to them because it's a longer trip from Mississippi, much longer trip
Yeah,
up to Omaha than it is from Norman, Oklahoma. But even so, man, they packed the house. It was crazy.
you
But
can see it on TV. You can see it on TV.
yeah, man, it was like the little section of OU fans behind the OU dugout, and that was pretty much it. They did anything good, you got that slight little roar from behind the dugout. But anytime there was any reason to cheer over anything Ole Miss did, man, that ballpark erupted.
Yeah, it was
So,
rocking.
yeah. So as long as Oklahoma has the fan support up there, man, I think this has the chance to be a special season. The way that they're looking offensively and the way that the pitching is really coming around, and we knew it would with Skip Johnson being the guru that he is. Well, for those of you that are not yet subscribed over at OUinsider.com, I'll go ahead and give you another reason right now beyond all the team and recruiting intel that you already get over there. D-Mac and Barry Wise are now part of the team. So they're dropping weekly insight, nuggets here and there, evaluations, the whole 9 yards, bringing a ton of super compelling original content to the OU Insider lineup. So it'll just cost you a few bucks a month. Trust me, like what you see on this YouTube channel, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what you'll get over at ouinsider.com. DMAC, man, awesome hanging. I appreciate you.
Man, always a pleasure, brother. I appreciate you as well.
All right. That's going to do it for this installment of OU Insider Live on this Wednesday evening. Stay tuned later in the week. Barry and it's the Barry and Mac show. I want to call it the Barry and D Mac show. It's just the Barry and Mac show. The Barry and Mac show coming your way. They'll be recording a fresh episode here in the next few days. We'll have another episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast coming your way as well with me, myself, and Brandon Drum. So stay tuned for all of that and coverage all throughout the week of OU baseball and softball as they navigate their respective tournaments. We'll see you on the other side. Take it easy, everybody.